Enki was a very important god in ancient Sumerian culture. He was associated with many key aspects of life, including water, knowledge, crafts, and creation.
He was associated with many key aspects of life, including water, knowledge, crafts, and creation. These are all things that were essential to the people of that time. Enki wasn't just any god. He was part of a powerful group of gods known as the Anunnaki, who were thought to be responsible for various aspects of the world. As time went on, Enki became known by different names in different cultures. For example, in the Akkadian religion, which was practiced by the Assyrians and Babylonians, he was called Ea or Ae. Some experts even think that Enki is the same as a god named Ea from the Canaanite religion. In Greek writings, Enki was called Aus, showing how his influence spread across different cultures and regions. Originally, Enki was the main god of the city of Eridu, one of the oldest cities in the world, located in what is now southern Iraq. As his worship grew, his influence expanded beyond Eridu. People from other parts of Mesopotamia, including the Canaanites, Hittites, and Hurrians, also began to honor him. This shows that Enki was not just a local god but one who was respected across a wide area. Enki was also associated with the stars and the sky. For example, he was linked with a group of stars known as the Southern Band of Constellations, and especially with a constellation called Asiku, which is also known as the Field or the Square of Pegasus. Beginning around the 2nd millennium BCE, the number 40 became closely associated with Enki, and people would sometimes use this number as a symbol for him in their writings. In Sumerian times, the planet Mercury was identified with Enki. Later on, the Babylonians connected Mercury with another god, Nabu, who was the son of the god Marduk. Additionally, the star Canopus, one of the brightest stars in the sky, was also linked to Enki, further showing his connection to the heavens. Many myths and stories about Enki have been discovered in ancient writings. These stories were found in various locations, ranging from southern Iraq to the Levantine coast, which includes parts of modern-day Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. Enki's name appears in some of the oldest known cuneiform inscriptions, showing that he was an important figure from very early on in history. His influence continued for a long time, lasting from the 3rd millennium BCE all the way down to the Hellenistic period, which was the time after Alexander the Great. This long-lasting importance highlights just how significant Enki was in the ancient world. Etymology. The exact meaning of the name Enki is not completely clear. The most common translation of his name is Lord of the Earth. The Sumerian word En is translated as Lord, and it was originally a title given to the high priest, a very important religious figure. The word Ki usually means earth, so putting En and Ki together gives us Lord of the Earth. However, there are other ideas about what Ki might mean in this context. Some think it could come from a word like Kig, whose meaning is not known, or Kor, which means mound. The name Ea, which Enki was also known by, is thought by some to come from the Hurrian language. However, others believe that Ea might be of Semitic origin, which is a family of languages that includes Hebrew and Arabic. In this case, the name Ea might come from a Semitic root word that means life, which could refer to spring or running water. In the Sumerian language, A means the house of water, and some think that this was originally the name of the shrine or temple dedicated to the god Enki in the city of Eridu. There is also a theory that before Enki was worshipped in Eridu, the main deity there was a different god named Abzu. Abzu was associated with the underground waters like a large aquifer. The story goes that Enki became the divine lover of the goddess Ninhursag and was involved in a mythical battle between the younger gods, known as the Ijiji and Abzu. After this, the Abzu, or underground waters, became the place where the foundation of Enki's temple was built. In Sumerian, the names of gods sometimes had different forms, like how Enlil could also be called Elil. En means Lord, and E means temple, so Ea could be a shortened way of saying Lord of Water, which makes sense because Enki was closely connected to water. The word Ab in Abzu also means water, further linking Enki to this element. Worship. The main temple dedicated to the god Enki was called Iabzu, which means Abzu Temple. Another name for it was Iengur-A, meaning House of the Subterranean Waters. This temple was a ziggurat, a type of stepped pyramid, and it was located near the ancient coastline of the Persian Gulf in the city of Eridu. The temple was surrounded by marshlands along the Euphrates River. Eridu is one of the oldest cities in southern Iraq, and the Iabzu Temple was the first known temple built there. Archaeologists have conducted major excavations at the site of Eridu, and they have found evidence that a shrine existed there over 6,500 years ago, during the Ubaid period, which is one of the earliest periods in Mesopotamian history. Over the next 4,500 years, the temple was expanded and rebuilt 18 times before it was eventually abandoned during the Persian period. Based on this evidence, some scholars, like Thorkild Jacobson, have suggested that the original god of the temple might have been Abzu, the god of the primordial waters. Over time, the attributes of Abzu may have been transferred to Enki, making him the main deity associated with the temple. Another scholar, P. Steinkeller, believes that in the earliest period, Enki might have had a less important role, possibly serving as a consort or high priest to a more powerful goddess, perhaps Ninhursag. Later, Enki became the primary god of the temple. One of the notable features of the Iabzu temple was a pool of fresh water at its entrance. During excavations, archaeologists found many carp bones, suggesting that people held large feasts at the temple. The imagery of carp is also connected to Enki, as they are depicted in the twin streams of water associated with him in later art. This suggests that these features, like the pool and the fish, were important elements of the temple for a very long time. In fact, these features became standard in all Sumerian temples that were built later, meaning that the Iabzu temple at Eridu set the pattern for how other temples in Sumer were constructed and organized. The rules and practices established at Eridu were faithfully followed in the construction of other temples throughout the region. Enki, one of the principal deities of ancient Mesopotamian mythology, was renowned as the keeper of the divine powers known as the Mi. These Mi were considered essential gifts of civilization, encompassing various aspects of culture, technology, and societal norms. Enki's divine status was often signified by the horned crown he wore, a symbol of his exalted position among the gods. One of the notable artifacts depicting Enki is the Atta seal, where he is shown with two streams of water flowing into each of his shoulders. These streams represent the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which were crucial to Mesopotamian agriculture and life. Enki's association with these rivers highlights his role as a deity deeply connected to water and its life-sustaining properties. Alongside him in this depiction are two trees, which symbolize the male and female aspects of nature, further emphasizing his role in fertility and growth. Enki is portrayed wearing a flounced skirt and a cone-shaped hat, traditional attire for gods in ancient Mesopotamian art. An eagle, a symbol of divine power and protection, descends to land on his outstretched right arm, reinforcing his role as a god of water, life, and replenishment. In addition to his role as a deity of water, Enki was considered the master shaper of the world, god of wisdom, and a keeper of all forms of magic. His domain included the Abzu, also known as Apsu in Akkadian. The Abzu was thought to be a vast freshwater sea or groundwater reservoir located deep within the earth. This association made Enki the lord of the Abzu, endowing him with the powers of fertility and creation. The Babylonian epic Enuma Elish recounts a significant myth involving Enki and the Abzu. In this myth, the Abzu, who is described as the begetter of the gods, becomes disturbed by the noise and activity of the younger gods and decides to destroy them to regain peace. Enki, who represents these younger gods and embodies their interests, intervenes by casting a spell on the Abzu, putting him into a deep, magical sleep. Enki then confines the Abzu underground, taking on his functions and powers. As the lord of the Abzu, Enki assumes all its roles, including its ability to fertilize the land, symbolizing the water and semen that are vital for creation and life. Historical records from the 3rd millennium BCE include references to the reeds of Enki. Reeds were significant in ancient Mesopotamian life, used for making baskets, containers, and other essential items. They were often collected from outside the city walls, where the dead or sick were carried. This association links Enki to the core or underworld in Sumerian mythology, reflecting his deep connection to the earth and its hidden waters. In earlier traditions, Enki's mother, Namu, was the goddess of primordial creative matter and was said to have given birth to the great gods. Namu was considered a pre-existent force of watery creativity, and she was believed to have been a vital part of the creation of Enki. Enki's character as a god of water is thus a continuation of this ancient tradition of associating water with life and creation. Enki's role as a fertilizing agent is further emphasized in Sumerian hymns, where he is depicted as standing at empty riverbeds and filling them with his water. This imagery underscores his importance as a life-giving deity and highlights his essential role in sustaining both the physical and symbolic aspects of civilization. Mythology. The cosmogonic myth prevalent in Sumerian culture, known as the Hieros Gamos or sacred marriage, represents a foundational narrative where divine principles manifest as dualistic opposites, male and female, coming together to create the cosmos. This myth emphasizes the significance of fertility, balance, and the union of complementary forces in the creation and maintenance of the world. One prominent example of this mythological theme is found in the epic Enki and Ninhursag. In this narrative, Enki, the lord of fresh water, resides with his wife in the idyllic paradise of Dilmun. Dilmun is depicted as a pristine and pure land, described in the text with the following lines. The land of Dilmun is a pure place, the land of Dilmun is a clean place, the land of Dilmun is a clean place, the land of Dilmun is a bright place. He who is alone laid himself down in Dilmun. The place after Enki is clean, that place is bright. Despite its purity, Dilmun is initially without water, a crucial element for sustaining life. Hearing the plight of Dilmun's goddess, Ninsikil, Enki responds by instructing the sun god Utu to bring fresh water from the earth. This divine intervention transforms Dilmun into a fertile and prosperous land. Her city drinks the water of abundance. Dilmun drinks the water of abundance. Her wells of bitter water, behold, they are become wells of good water. Her fields and farms produced crops and grain. Her city, behold, it has become the house of the banks and keys of the land. Dilmun is often identified with Bahrain, whose name in Arabic means two seas, reflecting the mingling of fresh waters from the Arabian aquifer with the salt waters of the Persian Gulf. This blending of waters is known in Sumerian as Namu, which was considered the mother of Enki. The myth continues with a narrative that bears similarities to the biblical story of the forbidden fruit. Enki, the water lord, causes the water of the heart to flow and, through his union with his consort Ninhursag, fertilizes her. After 9 days, symbolically representing the 9 months of pregnancy, Ninhursag gives birth to Ninsar, the Lady Greenery. Following this, Enki encounters Ninsar, who reminds him of his absent consort. Unaware that Ninsar is his daughter, Enki seduces her, resulting in the birth of Ninkura, the Lady Fruitfulness. Enki then repeats the pattern, seducing Ninkura, who subsequently gives birth to Atu, the weaver or spider, symbolizing the intricate web of life. In a third episode, Enki attempts to seduce Atu. Disturbed by Enki's behavior, Atu seeks advice from Ninhursag. Upset by her husband's promiscuity, Ninhursag advises Atu to avoid the riverbanks, where Enki's influence is most potent. In an alternate version of the myth, Ninhursag removes Enki's semen from Atu's womb and plants it in the earth, resulting in the rapid growth of 8 plants. Enki, in his curiosity, consumes these plants. The ingestion of his own semen causes Enki to suffer from various swellings throughout his body, leading to a crisis among the gods. In desperation, a fox seeks Enlil, the king of the gods, to retrieve Ninhursag, who then performs a miraculous act of healing. Ninhursag incorporates Enki's water or semen into her body and gives birth to deities who heal each specific part of Enki's afflicted body. Abu for the jaw, Nanshi for the throat, Nintal for the hip, Ninsutu for the tooth, Ninkasi for the mouth, Dazimua for the side, and Inshagag for the limbs. The final deity, Ninti, Lady Rib, is also a pun on Lady Life, reflecting Ninhursag's role as the source of life. This myth symbolically represents the process by which life is brought forth through the interaction of water with the land, demonstrating the necessity of water for fertility and growth. It also teaches the values of balance and moderation, underscoring the consequences of excess and the importance of responsibility. Ninti, whose title, the Mother of All Living, is also attributed to the Hurrian goddess Keba and to Eve in the biblical narrative, underscores a fascinating parallel. In the Bible, Eve is created from Adam's rib, mirroring the Sumerian myth where Ninhursag, as the goddess of life, plays a crucial role in creation. This connection highlights the thematic similarities between ancient Near Eastern myths and later religious narratives, revealing a shared cultural and symbolic framework that spans different traditions and epochs. In ancient Babylonian mythology, as told in the Enuma Elish, the story of the creation of humankind is deeply connected to the struggles and conflicts between the gods. After 6 generations of gods, the younger gods known as the Igigi, who were the sons and daughters of Enlil and Ninlil, grew tired of their duties. They were responsible for keeping the cosmos in order, but they decided to go on strike, refusing to continue their work. At this time, Abzu, the god of fresh water and one of the creators of the world, was angered by the chaos and threatened to destroy everything with his waters. The other gods were terrified and didn't know what to do. Enki, known for his wisdom, stepped in to help. He put Abzu to sleep, calming his anger, and confined him within irrigation canals and the core, the underworld, beneath his city of Eridu. However, the threat to the universe wasn't over. Tiamat, the goddess of the Salt Sea and Abzu's consort, was enraged by the imprisonment of Abzu. Encouraged by her son and advisor, Kingu, Tiamat decided to reclaim creation and take control herself. Once again, the gods were frightened and turned to Enki for help. But this time, Enki refused to get involved, possibly because he had already used Abzu's powers for irrigation. The gods then sought the help of Enlil, the patriarchal god of Nippur, who was a powerful and authoritative figure. Enlil agreed to help on one condition: the gods must make him the king of the gods. In the Babylonian version of the story, Enlil's role is replaced by Marduk, Enki's son, and in the Assyrian version, it is the god Ashur who takes on this role. Enlil, or Marduk/Ashur, went on to defeat Tiamat by shooting the arrows of his winds into her throat. After her defeat, he used her body to create the heavens, with her ribs forming the arch of the sky. Her tail was placed in the sky as the Milky Way, and her tears became the source of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Even after Tiamat's defeat, the gods still faced the challenge of maintaining the cosmos. Enki, who could have helped, was in a deep sleep and didn't hear their calls for assistance. His mother, Namu, who was also the mother of both Abzu and Tiamat, brought the tears of the gods to Enki and urged him to wake up and take action. Namu told Enki that the gods needed servants to keep the cosmos running smoothly, and she suggested creating humankind for this purpose. Enki agreed but suggested that they make humans out of clay and blood. Although Enki initially opposed the idea of using Kingu's blood, the other gods insisted, and Enki eventually consented. They used Kingu's blood to create the first human, with whom Enki later developed a close relationship. This first human was named Adapa, who became one of the 7 sages, also known as the Ebgalu, which means great man of water. These sages were wise men who played a crucial role in guiding humanity. To help with the creation of humans, Enki assembled a group of divine beings known as the Good and Princely Fashioners. He told his mother, Namu, that the creature she had envisioned already existed in some form. Together, they mixed the heart of clay from the abyss, and with the help of Ninhursag, Enki's wife and consort, and the goddess of birth, possibly Nintu, they brought the first humans to life. This story illustrates the complex relationships between the gods and their roles in the creation and maintenance of the universe. It also reflects the idea that humankind was created to serve the gods, ensuring that the cosmos would continue to function properly. According to the myth, the creation of humans was a collaborative effort involving multiple deities, each contributing their unique powers and abilities to bring humanity into existence. Some scholars, like Samuel Noah Kramer, believe that this story of Enki's role in the creation of humankind is connected to an even older myth about Enki's struggle with the dragon core, which represents the underworld. Another ancient text, the Atrahasis Epos, suggests that it was Enlil who requested Namu to create humans, and Namu agreed, saying that with the help of her son Enki, she could create humans in the image of the gods. In the ancient Sumerian story called Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata, there's a special part where the god Enki is said to have helped humans communicate using one language. This idea comes from a speech by Enmerkar, one of the characters in the story. Some versions of the story describe this part as a spell that talks about how Enki made sure that everyone spoke the same language. In other versions, it's a hymn or a kind of song asking Enki to do this. Either way, Enki's actions helped the two kings in the story talk to each other easily because everyone in the world spoke one language at that time. The language they spoke was believed to be Sumerian, which was considered the most important language according to the story. In 2019, a scholar named J. Chrysostomo translated this part of the story using the work of another researcher named C. Mittermeier. Chrysostomo's translation paints a picture of a time when the world was peaceful and harmonious, with no dangerous animals or threats. He describes the lands of Sumer, Hamatsi, Sumer, Akkad, and Martu as places where people lived safely. All the people across the whole world spoke one language, and they used this language to praise Enlil, one of the main gods. Enki, known as the Lord of Abundance, Wisdom, and Truth, then decided to change the language that people spoke. He made it so that the people of the world no longer spoke the same language. This change, which Enki brought about, led to a situation where humanity no longer had one unified language. Here's how Chrysostomo translated the ancient text. At that time, as there was no snake, as there was no scorpion, as there was no hyena, as there was no lion, as there was no dog or wolf, as there was no fear or trembling, as humans had no rival. It was then that the lands of Sumer and Hamatsi, the distinctly tongued Sumer, the great mountain, the essence of nobility, Akkad, the land possessing the befitting, and the land of Martu, lying in safety, the totality of heaven and earth, the well-guarded people, all proclaimed Enlil in a single language. Enki, the Lord of Abundance and True Word, the Lord chosen in wisdom who watches over the land, the expert of all the gods, the chosen in wisdom, the Lord of Eridu, Enki placed an alteration of the language in their mouths. The speech of humanity is one. In contrast, an earlier translation from 1940 by another scholar named S.N. Kramer tells a similar story but with some differences in wording. Kramer's version also talks about a peaceful time when there were no dangerous animals or fear. In his version, the lands are described similarly, and the people all speak in unison, praising Enlil with one language. But then, Enki, who is described as a wise and trustworthy leader of the gods, changes the language in people's mouths, introducing confusion and division among them. This change causes humans to no longer speak with one voice. Here's Kramer's translation. Once upon a time there was no snake, there was no scorpion, there was no hyena, there was no lion, there was no wild dog, no wolf, there was no fear, no terror, man had no rival. In those days, the lands of Sumer and Hamatsi, harmony-tongued Sumer, the great land of the decrees of princeship, Uri, the land having all that is appropriate, the land Martu, resting in security, the whole universe, the people in unison to Enlil in one tongue spoke. Then Enki, the Lord of Abundance, whose commands are trustworthy, the Lord of Wisdom, who understands the land, the leader of the gods, endowed with wisdom, the Lord of Eridu changed the speech in their mouths, brought contention into the speech of man that until then had been one. This story shows how Enki, who was a powerful and wise god, had the ability to influence how people communicated. By changing the language that everyone spoke, Enki introduced differences and disagreements among humans, making it harder for them to understand each other. This myth reflects the importance of language in creating unity or division among people and highlights the role of the gods in shaping the human experience. In the ancient Sumerian version of the flood myth, the full details of why the flood happened and how the hero survived are unclear because part of the tablet that tells the story has been destroyed. However, a scholar named Samuel Noah Kramer suggested that it's likely the hero, Ziusadra, survived the flood with the help of the god Enki. This idea is based on later versions of the flood story found in Akkadian and Babylonian texts, where Enki plays a crucial role in saving the flood hero. In one of these later stories, known as the Legend of Atrahasis, the flood happens because Enlil, the king of the gods, decides that humanity has become too noisy and is disturbing his rest. To get rid of humans, Enlil sends a series of disasters, drought, famine, and plague. But each time, Enki steps in to help by secretly teaching a human named Atrahasis how to survive these calamities. Atrahasis then advises the people to stop worshipping all the gods except the one causing the disaster, and this act seems to make the gods feel ashamed, leading them to stop the disaster. Even though humans survive these initial disasters, they continue to multiply. This frustrates Enlil, who then calls a meeting of all the gods and makes them promise not to tell the humans about his final plan to wipe them out completely with a flood. Enki, however, doesn't want to see humanity destroyed, so he secretly warns Atrahasis about the flood. But instead of telling him directly, Enki speaks to him through a reed wall, instructing him to build a boat to save himself, his family, and other living creatures. When the 7-day flood finally comes, Atrahasis follows Enki's instructions and survives. After the floodwaters recede, Atrahasis releases a swallow, a raven, and a dove to see if the land is dry. Once the flood is over and the boat lands, Atrahasis makes a sacrifice to the gods. Although Enlil is furious that his plan to destroy humanity has been foiled, he realizes that Enki is the one who intervened. Enki then explains that it would have been unjust to kill everyone, especially the innocent. The gods then agree to put measures in place to ensure that the human population doesn't grow too large in the future. This myth is one of the oldest known stories about a great flood in the Middle East. It shows the tension between different gods, especially Enlil, who wants to control or destroy humanity, and Enki, who seeks to protect it. The story also highlights the idea that the gods can change their minds and that there is a balance between justice and punishment when it comes to dealing with humanity. In the myth Enki and Inanna, the young goddess Inanna, who is connected to the temple of Inanna in the city of Uruk, spends time feasting with her father, the god Enki. They engage in a drinking competition, and as Enki becomes thoroughly drunk, he gives Inanna all of the MES, special powers and rules that govern civilization. The next morning, Enki wakes up with a hangover and asks his servant Isamud for the MES. Isamud informs Enki that he had already given them to Inanna. Upset by this, Enki sends his Gala servants to retrieve the MES from Inanna. However, Inanna manages to safely sail back to Uruk in the boat of heaven. Eventually, Enki admits defeat and agrees to a peace treaty with Uruk. This myth may symbolize a time when political power transitioned from Enki's city, Eridu, to Inanna's city, Uruk. The story also highlights themes of youthful cleverness, Inanna, and the consequences of irresponsible behavior, Enki's drunkenness. In another myth, Inanna's descent, Inanna decides to visit her grieving sister Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, who is mourning the death of her husband, Gugalana, a great bull killed by Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Before setting out, Inanna tells her servant Ninshubur that if she does not return in 3 days, she should seek help from the gods Anu, Enlil, or Enki. After Inanna fails to return, Ninshubur asks Anu for help, but he declines, confident in Inanna's strength. Enlil, busy with his cosmic duties, also refuses. However, Enki immediately shows concern and sends his Gala, special beings created from the dirt under his fingernails, to rescue Inanna. These beings may have inspired the Greco-Roman Galli, who were androgynous figures involved in religious rituals. Enki's quick response shows his protective nature, especially towards those in need, like Inanna. Another story, Inanna and Shukalatuda, tells of a gardener named Shukalatuda, who was assigned by Enki to care for a date palm tree he had created. One day, Shukalatuda finds Inanna sleeping beneath the tree and rapes her while she is asleep. When Inanna wakes and realizes what has happened, she is furious and seeks to punish Shukalatuda. Fearing her wrath, Shukalatuda turns to Enki for protection. Believed to be Shukalatuda's father, Enki advises him to hide in the city where Inanna won't find him. Enki, who is known for protecting those who seek his help, challenges Inanna to control her anger and approach the situation more rationally. Eventually, Inanna calms down and also seeks Enki's guidance as the spokesperson for the assembly of the gods, including the Igigi and the Anunnaki. After she presents her case, Enki agrees that justice should be served and helps her find where Shukalatuda is hiding. These myths highlight the complex relationships between the gods, showing Enki as both a protector and a wise counselor, while also revealing Inanna's growth from a young, impulsive goddess to a more thoughtful and judicious figure. They also reflect the themes of power, justice, and the importance of balance in the actions of the gods. Influence. Enki and his later form, Ea, were often depicted in a unique manner that emphasizes his connection to water. Sometimes shown as a man covered with the skin of a fish, this representation, along with the name of his temple, Eapsu, House of the Watery Deep, points to his original identity as a god of the waters. This symbolism is reminiscent of the figure Oannes, a mythic being associated with the sea. The excavations of 18 shrines at the site of Enki's temple revealed thousands of carp bones, suggesting that fish were consumed during feasts dedicated to the god. Although specific details about the cult of Enki at Eridu remain sparse, historical evidence indicates that his temple was associated with Ninhursag's temple, which was named Esagila, the lofty head house. This name is shared with Marduk's temple in Babylon and refers to a stage tower or ziggurat. This association also links to the temple of Enlil at Nippur, known as Kor, Kor meaning hill, highlighting a tradition of monumental temple architecture in Mesopotamian religion. Incantations and ceremonial rites involving water, as a sacred element, played a prominent role in Enki's worship. This practice is also reflected in the myth of the Hieros Gamos or sacred marriage between Enki and Ninhursag, which serves as an etiological myth explaining the fertilization of dry land through the introduction of irrigation water. The early inscriptions from Urukagina suggest that Enki and Ninki were seen as the progenitors of several pairs of gods, including Enki as the god of Eridu, Enlil of Nippur, and Suen or Sin of Uar. They were believed to be the children of an sky and Ki earth. The pool of the Abzu in front of Enki's temple was later adopted at the temple of Nana, Akkadian Sin, the moon god at Uar, and this practice spread throughout the Middle East. This sacred pool is thought to have influenced the concept of the sacred pool in mosques and the holy water font in Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. The political significance of Eridu in Sumerian affairs is uncertain, but its status as a sacred city endured even after it lost political importance. Myths featuring Enki have been found in various ancient texts, including those from Assurbanipal's library and the Hattusis archive in Hittite Anatolia. As Enki had a broad influence outside Sumer, being equated with El at Ugarit and possibly Ya at Ebla in the Canaanite pantheon. He is also found in Hurrian and Hittite mythology as a god of contracts, known for his benevolence toward humankind. The name Ea is believed to derive from the term Hyy life, reflecting Enki's association with life-giving waters. Enki/Ea is fundamentally a god of civilization, wisdom, and culture. He was a creator and protector of humanity and the world. Traces of this version of Ea can be seen in the Marduk epic, which celebrates the achievements of this god and highlights the close relationship between the cults of Enki at Eridu and Marduk in Babylon. Marduk's sanctuary in Babylon, Esagila, shared the same name as a temple in Eridu. Marduk was often described as the son of Ea, inheriting his powers after his father's voluntary abdication. Enki's role in the pantheon is solidified as the third member of a triad consisting of Anu, Enlil, and himself. As the Shar Apsu, king of the abyss or watery element, Enki controlled the Apsu, the primordial waters beneath the earth. This realm was also associated with the underworld, or Erilu, where Enki was referred to as Enki, Lord of that which is below, in contrast to Anu, who was Lord of the heavens. The cult of Enki spread throughout Babylonia and Assyria, with temples dedicated to him in cities such as Nippur, Girsu, Uar, Babylon, Sippar, and Nineveh. Enki's consort, Ninhursag, was known by various titles, including Ki, Uriash Damkina, Lady of that which is below, and Damgalnunna, Big Lady of the Waters. Although Ninhursag was originally considered equal to Enki, her role became more subordinate in the later Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian periods. Enki's character, reflecting pre-patriarchal times, preferred persuasion and harmony over conflict, demonstrating a greater gender equality in earlier mythological narratives. Enki and his later form, Ea, were often depicted in a unique manner that emphasizes his connection to water. Sometimes shown as a man covered with the skin of a fish, this representation, along with the name of his temple, Eapsu, House of the Watery Deep, points to his original identity as a god of the waters. This symbolism is reminiscent of the figure Oannes, a mythic being associated with the sea. The excavations of 18 shrines at the site of Enki's temple revealed thousands of carp bones, suggesting that fish were consumed during feasts dedicated to the god. Although specific details about the cult of Enki at Eridu remain sparse, historical evidence indicates that his temple was associated with Ninhursag's temple, which was named Esagila, the lofty head house. This name is shared with Marduk's temple in Babylon and refers to a stage tower or ziggurat. This association also links to the temple of Enlil at Nippur, known as Kor, Kor meaning hill, highlighting a tradition of monumental temple architecture in Mesopotamian religion. Incantations and ceremonial rites involving water, as a sacred element, played a prominent role in Enki's worship. This practice is also reflected in the myth of the Hieros Gamos or sacred marriage between Enki and Ninhursag, which serves as an etiological myth explaining the fertilization of dry land through the introduction of irrigation water. The early inscriptions from Urukagina suggest that Enki and Ninki were seen as the progenitors of several pairs of gods, including Enki as the god of Eridu, Enlil of Nippur, and Suen or Sin of Uar. They were believed to be the children of an sky and Ki earth. The pool of the Abzu in front of Enki's temple was later adopted at the temple of Nana, Akkadian Sin, the moon god at Uar, and this practice spread throughout the Middle East. This sacred pool is thought to have influenced the concept of the sacred pool in mosques and the holy water font in Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. The political significance of Eridu in Sumerian affairs is uncertain, but its status as a sacred city endured even after it lost political importance. Myths featuring Enki have been found in various ancient texts, including those from Assurbanipal's library and the Hattusis archive in Hittite Anatolia. As Enki had a broad influence outside Sumer, being equated with El at Ugarit and possibly Ya at Ebla in the Canaanite pantheon. He is also found in Hurrian and Hittite mythology as a god of contracts, known for his benevolence toward humankind. The name Ea is believed to derive from the term Hyy life, reflecting Enki's association with life-giving waters. Enki/Ea is fundamentally a god of civilization, wisdom, and culture. He was a creator and protector of humanity and the world. Traces of this version of Ea can be seen in the Marduk epic, which celebrates the achievements of this god and highlights the close relationship between the cults of Enki at Eridu and Marduk in Babylon. Marduk's sanctuary in Babylon, Esagila, shared the same name as a temple in Eridu. Marduk was often described as the son of Ea, inheriting his powers after his father's voluntary abdication. Enki's role in the pantheon is solidified as the third member of a triad consisting of Anu, Enlil, and himself. As the Shar Apsu, king of the abyss or watery element, Enki controlled the Apsu, the primordial waters beneath the earth. This realm was also associated with the underworld, or Erilu, where Enki was referred to as Enki, Lord of that which is below, in contrast to Anu, who was Lord of the heavens. The cult of Enki spread throughout Babylonia and Assyria, with temples dedicated to him in cities such as Nippur, Girsu, Uar, Babylon, Sippar, and Nineveh. Enki's consort, Ninhursag, was known by various titles, including Ki, Uriashdamkina, Lady of that which is below, and Damgalnunna, Big Lady of the Waters. Although Ninhursag was originally considered equal to Enki, her role became more subordinate in the later Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian periods. Enki's character, reflecting pre-patriarchal times, preferred persuasion and harmony over conflict, demonstrating a greater gender equality in earlier mythological narratives. Enki and his later form, Ea, were often depicted in a unique manner that emphasizes his connection to water. Sometimes shown as a man covered with the skin of a fish, this representation, along with the name of his temple, Eapsu, House of the Watery Deep, points to his original identity as a god of the waters. This symbolism is reminiscent of the figure Oannes, a mythic being associated with the sea. The excavations of 18 shrines at the site of Enki's temple revealed thousands of carp bones, suggesting that fish were consumed during feasts dedicated to the god. Although specific details about the cult of Enki at Eridu remain sparse, historical evidence indicates that his temple was associated with Ninhursag's temple, which was named Esagila, the lofty head house. This name is shared with Marduk's temple in Babylon and refers to a stage tower or ziggurat. This association also links to the temple of Enlil at Nippur, known as Kor, meaning hill, highlighting a tradition of monumental temple architecture in Mesopotamian religion. Incantations and ceremonial rites involving water, as a sacred element, played a prominent role in Enki's worship. This practice is also reflected in the myth of the Hieros Gamos or sacred marriage between Enki and Ninhursag, which serves as an ideological myth explaining the fertilization of dry land through the introduction of irrigation water. The early inscriptions from Urukagina suggest that Enki and Ninki were seen as the progenitors of several pairs of gods, including Enki as the god of Eridu, Enlil of Nippur, and Suen or Sin of Uar. They were believed to be the children of an sky and Ki earth. The pool of the Abzu in front of Enki's temple was later adopted at the temple of Nana, Akkadian Sin, the moon god at Uar, and this practice spread throughout the Middle East. This sacred pool is thought to have influenced the concept of the sacred pool in mosques and the holy water font in Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. The political significance of Eridu in Sumerian affairs is uncertain, but its status as a sacred city endured even after it lost political importance. Myths featuring Enki have been found in various ancient texts, including those from Assurbanipal's library and the Hattusis archive in Hittite Anatolia. As Enki had a broad influence outside Sumer, being equated with El at Ugarit and possibly Ya at Ebla in the Canaanite pantheon. He is also found in Hurrian and Hittite mythology as a god of contracts, known for his benevolence toward humankind. The name Ea is believed to derive from the term Hyy life, reflecting Enki's association with life-giving waters. Enki/Ea is fundamentally a god of civilization, wisdom, and culture. He was a creator and protector of humanity and the world. Traces of this version of Ea can be seen in the Marduk epic, which celebrates the achievements of this god and highlights the close relationship between the cults of Enki at Eridu and Marduk in Babylon. Marduk's sanctuary in Babylon, Esagila, shared the same name as a temple in Eridu. Marduk was often described as the son of Ea, inheriting his powers after his father's voluntary abdication. Enki's role in the pantheon is solidified as the third member of a triad consisting of Anu, Enlil, and himself. As the Shar Apsu, king of the abyss or watery element, Enki controlled the Apsu, the primordial waters beneath the earth. This realm was also associated with the underworld, or Erilu, where Enki was referred to as Enki, Lord of that which is below, in contrast to Anu, who was Lord of the heavens. The cult of Enki spread throughout Babylonia and Assyria, with temples dedicated to him in cities such as Nippur, Girsu, Uar, Babylon, Sippar, and Nineveh. Enki's consort, Ninhursag, was known by various titles, including Ki, Uriash Damkina, Lady of that which is below, and Damgalnunna, Big Lady of the Waters. Although Ninhursag was originally considered equal to Enki, her role became more subordinate in the later Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian periods. Enki's character, reflecting pre-patriarchal times, preferred persuasion and harmony over conflict, demonstrating a greater gender equality in earlier mythological narratives. In 1964, Italian archaeologists led by Paolo Mattei from the University of Rome La Sapienza excavated the ancient city of Ebla, dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE. Among the discoveries were many written documents, which were translated by Giovanni Pettinato. These documents revealed that after the reign of Sargon of Akkad, the people of Ebla began to replace the name of El, the chief god of the Canaanite pantheon, with Ia in their names. For example, names like Michael and Ishmael became Micaiah and Ishmael. Jean Bottero and other scholars suggested that Ia might be a Canaanite way of pronouncing the Akkadian name Ea. However, most scholars do not support the idea that this Ia is related to the Israelite god Yahweh, explaining that it was likely a misinterpretation. William Hello also compared Ia with the Ugaritic god Yam, also known as Judge Nahar or Judge River, whose earlier name was Yaw or Yea. Also known as Dagon and Wana or Oans in Greek, was one of the 7 sages in ancient myths. If you're new to this audiobook series, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel for future episodes. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment with your feedback or questions.